Hi, this is Mike from DraftBuddy.com, and I'm going to do a video today to show you an overview of the Cheatsheet Compiler and Draft Buddy Fantasy Baseball draft tools. I'm starting on the website here, but let's go over to Excel and open up the compiler, which is the first file that you want to start with. It creates the custom cheat sheets for us. So let me open that up. Here it is on my hard drive. Just open, and then you need to enable macros to make sure all the functions in the compiler work, and that is consistent with the other files as well. The Draft Buddy file and Projection Pal file each have macros, which are back-end programming to do certain automated tasks and make basically the files work the way we want them to. Okay, so I'm in the compiler here, and I'm on the Setup tab, which is your main tab where you input your league settings, which is going to help us create the custom cheat sheets. I'm going to input my settings for a league I'm prepping for with the draft next week. But you can see here, up here we have the name of the league. You identify if it's a road or fantasy points league, what player pool you're going to use, number of draft rounds, number of teams in the league, whether it's a keeper league or not, auction settings. If I scroll down a little bit, I've got you indicate the starters for the hitters and pitchers. A little further down is the scoring, and then some other advanced options, including here is where you decide if you want to use the DraftBuddy.com projections, which are included by default, some stats from the prior years, or if you want to import projections into the compiler, then you can do some cheat sheets based on those. Let me start with the league settings here, and as I mentioned, I'm prepping for a league I'm drafting next week, and so I'll start right up here with the league name. It is a roto scoring league, mixed AL NL. It's a 12-team league, and we've got 27 rounds in the draft because there's 27 roster spots. Position eligibility is 20 games. No, it's not a keeper league. It's not an auction league, but I want to mention about the auction settings that if you are in a roto scoring league, even if it's not an auction draft, the auction settings will still have an impact on your cheat sheets. And the reason for that is because traditionally in fantasy baseball, the player values are represented in dollars. So we use the auction settings to drive those dollar values. 260 is typical. If you open up any fantasy baseball magazine or go to a different website which has rankings for roto leagues, they're going to be in dollars, and they're going to be based off a $260 salary cap. So we're going to leave it at 260, which is the default. The cap allocation here for hitters and pitchers, you can see I've got it set at 70-30 by default. I've noticed this year that hitters are a little bit overvalued relative to pitchers when I'm running the compiler, so I may just want to adjust this a little bit, and I'm going to take it down to 65 for hitters, which means 35% to the pitchers. And what's going to happen there is we're going to see some of the pitchers kind of start, the best starting pitchers towards the end of the first round, whereas when I had it at 70-30, the pitchers were down in value a little bit. So you may want to play with that cap allocation a little bit if you're finding that your pitchers are ranked lower than you would like. Okay, for this particular league, I think by default most of my starters were set up correctly. One catcher, one around the infield, 5 outfielders is right. No DH position, but there's a utility, a corner, and a middle infield. Pitchers for this league was a little bit different. It doesn't have set starters and relievers. It has 9 pitchers overall, any mix. So I'm just going to change that to 009. It's a 5x5 roto league. By default, the roto categories are already in here for a traditional 5x5 with the homers, runs, RBIs, stolen bases, and batting average. Over on the pitcher side, wins, saves, Ks, ERA, and WHIP are all checked off, so I'm okay there. At this point, I could hit compile cheat sheets and create cheat sheets for this league based on the DraftBuddy.com projections. But what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to import projections into the compiler, which we make available with Projection Pal, and I'm going to choose the Zeal consensus projections from Fantasy Pros. So see, I'm opening up PAL here, the Zeal projections one that we make available for download. Those are from the Fantasy Pros website, which you can see right here. So thanks to Fantasy Pros for providing those to us. And we have the most up-to-date. These have been updated on the website with the most updated ones. So let me just run through this here. So PAL, like I said, it helps get projections from another website into the compiler because it's got to line up with the proper players in the compiler. Now, the advantage of the Zeal consensus projections that we have is I've already preloaded all the projections into PAL for you, so you don't have to fuss around with that. I've already done all the work there. All you need to do is open up PAL, make sure that your compiler file name is the same, and if you haven't changed it, it should be fine. And then go to the Hitters Raw tab and hit Copy to Compiler. It's going to copy these projections, which are the same as on the Fantasy Pros website, which is the consensus of a bunch of experts' projections, and it's going to put them in the compiler for us. And there we go, right there. They're in the compiler in this Site B section, which was blank previously. And now we can use them for our cheat sheets if we so choose. Now I need to do the same for the pictures. So I'll go back to PAL. Now I'm going to go to the Pictures Raw tab. You can see that the Zeal projections are already in here. I hit it Copy to Compiler, and they should go in the my copy of the compiler on the Pictures tab. Now, should you use Projection Pal to grab other projections, there is a little bit of work involved in getting them in there. And you have to make sure the headings are correct and make sure the names are, going to match up with the compiler. But all in all, that's that's a video for another day. So let me close Projection Pal, and we'll close that up. You can see my picture projections are now in here in the compiler. So let's say I do want to do my cheat sheets based off those instead of the Draft Buddy ones for this one. I'm going to change my allocation key back in the Setup tab to Site B 100%. Site B, I can change the name for the label to Zeal, so I know where those projections came from. And now I'm pretty much ready to go. I've got my settings in. I got my projections I want to use. All I do is hit Compile Cheat Sheets, and the compiler was going to create the new cheat sheets for us as soon as it runs through these steps, which shouldn't take too long. You may notice it's slow sometimes. Often that's because you've kept other Excel files open. That's why I made sure I closed Projection Pal before I got to that stage. And you can see it actually worked fairly quickly. And this is in an older version of Excel as well. Okay, here are our cheat sheets. Here's the hitters cheat sheet with all the positions. And I scroll down, I've got the catchers in the outfield as well. If I scroll across to the right, I see the pitchers cheat sheet split up between starters and relievers. And a little further is the overall cheat sheet. So where all the positions are mixed up. And we can see based on the Zeal consensus projections and the valuations from the compiler that Albert Pujols is ranked number 1, Miguel Cabrera number 2, which certainly makes some sense. Pay attention to the pitchers, where your pitchers are. Again, remember I changed that cap allocation. Roy Halladay came out 10th as the top pitcher. Had I not changed the cap allocation and left it at 70-30, he would have been somewhat lower, as would all the pitchers. So, again, that's one setting you may want to play with. Keep in mind, if you change any settings on the Setup tab or change your projections, you need to run Compile Cheat Sheets again, or the cheat sheets will not update. Okay, at this point, we're pretty much done with the compiler. We've got our cheat sheets as created. It's time to get these into Draft Buddy and get our Draft Buddy ready to draft. So I'm going to open up Draft Buddy, enable macros again, and on the Setup tab in Buddy, there aren't a lot of options here. Essentially there's, put in the owners and team names for your league, mark your own team, and that's pretty much it because all the league settings are from the compiler. All we need to do here is hit Setup Draft Buddy. It's going to pull in the cheat sheets from the compiler and prepare all the other tabs for the league settings I had in. So you can see it took me over to the draft input tab once it ran through that setup process. It's got 12 teams, which is what we've got, a 12-team league. The cheat sheets are on separate tabs over here. There's the hitters, the pitchers, and overall. You can see I've got the league name right up here. I've got Roy Halladay 10th, so the cheat sheets did copy over properly. And now I'm pretty much ready to draft. I would go to Setup tab in Buddy, put in the owner and team names, close the compiler. So I would close that. And thanks Excel for the beep there. And now I'm pretty much ready to draft. I would suggest closing the compiler because that will speed things up. But the way that Draft Buddy works. And you don't really need the compiler at this point either because you've got everything you need in Draft Buddy. So at this point, let's say the draft starts. I'll draft a player. Cabrera goes number 1 off the board. I click on his name and hit Draft Player. And then you see he disappears off the overall cheat sheet. He disappears off the hitter's cheat sheet. And we look on the draft input tab, there he is. He went beside the number 1 pick. Owner 1 took him. I check Owner 1's roster over here on the By Team tab. Open this up for some detail. And there he is drafted. And then you're just going to continue on that way, drafting every player as they come off the board. So that's my overview of the compiler and Draft Buddy to get you started using these fantasy baseball draft tools.